represented in a sample than they are in the population. The source of this bias is often convenient sampling. For example, if one stands outside of a luxury grocery store, sampling people for information on their opinions about the upcoming election, wealthy or upper middle class consumers may be more represented in the sample. Or, for example, if one stands outside the grocery store during the day, one might be more likely to meet with people who are unemployed, elderly, or staying at home with children. Voluntary bias or non-response bias are biases that occur when samples are derived from volunteers. The volunteers sometimes represent members of the population who have particular motivations for participating in a survey. For example, if the survey pays money, need for compensation might be a motivator, or if the respondents are being asked for opinions on, say, consumer products, those with strong opinions, grievances to air, or raves to give may be more likely than the rest of the population to volunteer for the sample. Another type of survey bias is caused by errors in measurement, and this is called response bias. There are two primary forms of response bias. Social norms bias occurs when individuals respond misleadingly to survey questions to make a good impression. Their responses will tend to reflect what they believe is socially desirable rather than what is true. For example, if college students are asked about their drinking habits, a college student who is at home with their parents will be less likely to respond honestly about heavy drinking habits than one who is asked in the privacy of his dorm. Leading questions are another form of survey bias that cause response bias. These questions tend to push a respondent to answer in a particular way. Leading questions may take a quantitative form by offering respondents more options of one type of answer than another. For example, by asking a person to describe a product and providing 8 positive choices, but only 2 negative choices. Leading questions may also be qualitative, incorporating assumptions into the question. For example, if I were to ask you, how much did you enjoy something? You will tend to answer in terms of enjoyment and be less likely to answer that you did not enjoy something. In summary, data can be collected from a population via censuses, entire population surveys, or surveys of only some of the population, or sample surveys. There are 2 main categories of survey sampling methods, probability and non-probability sampling. Probability sampling is a sampling method in which each member of the population being studied has a known positive chance of being chosen for the sample, while non-probability sampling is a sampling method in which the likelihood of each member of the population being chosen for the sample is unknown, or some of the members of the population may have no chance of being chosen. Survey bias may be caused by unrepresentative samples due to selection bias, such as overcoverage or voluntary bias. Or survey bias may be due to measurement error, due to response bias, such as social norms bias or leading questions bias. This concludes our lesson on sample surveys and censuses. Welcome to this elementary statistics lesson on surveys. In this lesson, you will learn the definitions of surveys and censuses, the definition and methods of probability sampling, the definition and methods of non-probability sampling, and sources of survey bias. Data can be collected from a population via surveys. A census is a survey of the entire population. All other things being equal, the census method minimizes systemic error, but is often impractical because it's difficult to access every member of some populations. Sample surveys collect data from only a portion of the population. They're often more practical than censuses. Let's do an exercise. We will identify 3 different surveys and determine whether they are surveys, sample surveys, or censuses. Recall that a census is a survey of an entire population, while a survey is a survey of only a portion of a population. Consider the example of a survey of a classroom taken by surveying each student in the class. Is this a census or a survey? Note that the population stated is the classroom population. If every student in the class is surveyed, then this is a census. Consider a survey of students in a school by surveying some students from each grade. The population in question is the students in a school.